Hi, my name is Qi Chenyu. Today I'm going to talk about the study Self-Regulation and Personality among L2 writers, integrating trait, state, and learner perspectives. It was written by Daniel Jackson and Sylvan Park. It was published in the Journal of Second Language Writing. It's part of the abstract of this study, and I think these two sentences could tell us something about this research, like the purpose and the research context, and also the methodology. The first sentence tells us the purpose and the research context. This study integrated trait, state, and learner perspectives to better understand the potential relationships between self-regulation, L2 writing, and two personality factors, conscientiousness and neuroticism in the university EFL context. L2 writing is writing done in the language other than the writer's native language or mother tongue. And the second sentence tells us the methodology. Based on an innovative mixed methods design, data from cross-sectional and longitudinal samples were analyzed using quantitative and qualitative techniques, including structural equation modeling, visualization tools, and participant interviews. Mixed methods refers to the method that there are more than one method applied in this research. Cross-sectional designs serve to uncover structural relations between variables, while longitudinal designs offer insight into their temporal dynamics. We need to understand some keywords, some terminology or linguistic background before we start to read. It may help us to read or understand more effectively and more easily. The first one is IDs, individual differences, which is defined as characteristics that make individuals dissimilar to each other. Studies of IDs in L2 writing are essential to understanding long-term developmental changes as reflected in research on learning to write, and also to understanding short-term psycholinguistic progresses, which seek to reveal a blueprint of the L2 writer. And the second one is SRC, self-regulatory capacity, is a multifaceted system of strategies applied to specific learning domains. And according to Donay and Rand, self-regulation is a dynamic construct that connects strategic capacity, intent, and learning behavior. Talking about the SRC, LLIs cannot be ignored because self-regulation and LLS may be regarded as two sides of the same coin. Language learning strategies refers to the processes and actions that are consciously deployed by language learners to help them to learn or use a language more effectively. Donay had argued that definitions of LLS did not differentiate between effort for language learning and use of LLS, nor could a given strategy be regarded as good or bad. For example, in L2 writing, the use of an online dictionary may support beginners, but this kind of learning strategy may impede fluency among advanced writers, so good strategy always invoke learning and depend on the user. In other words, when we are studying a second language, the learning strategy cannot be the same at the beginning and at the end of your study. The researchers have conducted two studies. This is the first one. Study 1 was designed to model structural relations between SRC and personality in L2 writing. The research question is, what is the relationship between SRC in L2 writing conscientiousness, neuroticism, and self-reported writing ability. To be more specific, they hope to identify latent variables indicated by the questionnaires used in the research and seek confirmation of the relations between these variables through statistical modeling. And it was hypothesized by the researchers conscientiousness would positively contribute to SRC, whereas neuroticism would negatively contribute to it. Furthermore, they expected that SRC to be positively linked to self-reported writing ability. And there are 645 participants in study 1, and the researchers have made a detailed description of them. 74% were female and the rest were male. They were majoring in English, international communication, and Asian languages. And the researchers also tell us what they have done. Participants filled out all materials during a single session held on campus during April 2018. There are 3 instruments in Study 1, and all of them are questionnaires. The first one is self-regulation scales. This instrument assesses the use of strategies to regulate commitment, metacognition, satiation, emotion, and the environment. Each scale contains 4 items, which means there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 20 items in the questionnaire. This questionnaire has previously been validated in EFL writing contests. And the next one is personality scales. The 2 personality traits, conscientiousness and neuroticism, come from the 10 aspects of the Big Five proposed by De Jong, Courtier, and Peterson. In their model, conscientiousness is further divided into industriousness and orderliness scales, and neuroticism into volatility and withdrawal scales. Each scale was assessed based on 10 statements. Then the last one is self-reported writing ability scale. This is the only one that was designed by the researcher. Students were asked to report their perceived writing ability based on a 6-point Likert scale. So it is essential to conduct a pilot study. An earlier pilot study with 56 English majors at the same university found acceptable scale reliability and established the predictive validity of this instrument with a self-report measure of L2 writing. To examine the factual relationships between the subsummed traits of SRC personality and self-reported writing ability, they computed a confirmatory factor analysis, CFA. The traits were entered into the model together with their observed measures, and the hypothesized model was tested using EQS. Descriptive results. Table 1 shows the descriptive statistics and internal consistency estimates of the 5 SRC scales, while we can see from the table 3 of the 5 alpha coefficients were above the acceptable cutoff of 0.70. 2 of them were slightly lower than the criterion. 2 personality constructs Each with two subscales were also assigned for their descriptive statistics and internal consistency in Table 2. Their reliability coefficients range between 0.74 and 0.84, indicating that all four scales were above the cutoff of 0.70 for internal consistency. Next, it is a model evaluation. The hypothesized model in this figure represents a structural relationship between SRC between SRC here and the two personality trees of a neuroticism and conscientiousness. In the CFA, all 5 measures highly loaded on self-regulation, among them commitment, satiation, and emotion, show the most significantly unique contribution to SRC. 0.68 contributed the least. Neuroticism and conscientiousness were negatively associated with each other. We can say from here 0.48. Accordingly, their influence was also contrasting with respect to SRC. Conscientiousness negatively influenced SRC and neuroticism positively did. Although marginal self-reported writing ability was positively related to SRC while also being statistically significant, suggesting that the effort of SRC on students' L2 writing is never negligible. Therefore, individual students may need support to become more self-regulated L2 writers. And this is a study 2. Study 2 was designed to probe the temporal dynamics of and learner views on SRC and personality and L2 writing. The research questions are: do relationships between SRC in L2 writing and personality change over one semester or instruction? And how do students view their ability to self-regulate in L2 writing? It comprised a longitudinal case study incorporating data from the questionnaire from Study 1 as well as follow-up interviews. The goals at this stage were to expand on Study 1 by gathering data on SRC and personality over time, and to shine further light on these issues by obtaining participant views. Participants in Study 2 were first-year students enrolled in the first author's EAP class. And this year-long course aimed to prepare students for upper-level English medium courses by encouraging academic reading and writing, including persuasive and expository essays. Of 5 students who initially volunteered, 3 completed all questionnaires and were subsequently interviewed. The participants were L1 Japanese-speaking females aged from 18 to 19, majoring in English. This is a page introducing the instruments of Study 2. There are 2 instruments. First are the questionnaires we have mentioned in Study 1, SRC and personality scales. Data collection would time to coincide with the beginning and the end of both the semester and the 3 essay-length assignments. Then is interviews. The 3 participants joined an interview at the writing instructor's request on the date of the final questionnaire administration, or 1 day later, writer 2 and writer 3 were interviewed 1 day later. And in the process of the interview, English was used, as this was a language of communication between these individuals and one in which all users were proficient, although Japanese was also used occasionally. It's a result of writer 1. This picture shows raw scores for conscientiousness, neuroticism, and SRC over time, and this picture shows moving correlations between conscientiousness, neuroticism, and SRC. The longitudinal data for writer 1, as shown in this picture, indicated consistently high SRC, this green line, high SRC scores. Conscientiousness was stable with no difference between the beginning and the end of the study. Scores for neuroticism were less stable. The red line represents the neuroticism. Scores for neuroticism were less stable. In particular, peaks were observed twice during the term, followed by a slight decline at the end. So because of the higher score of the consistent higher score of the self-regulation, so it is hard to explain the right figure. By asking the writer 1 whether her self-regulation ever decreased, she replied, sometimes after a long break. So that's the importance of the follow-up interview. This is the result of writer 2. Writer 2's raw data shows moderate scores on SRC and the conscientiousness with lower scores on neuroticism. Overall, she shows more than half-point increase in SRC scores from the beginning to the end of the study. And as shown in this picture, the relationship between self-regulation and conscientiousness in writer 2's case was consistently supportive. These two variables were always positive correlated. And then let's look at the interview. Question is, what motivates you? Here, I entered university. I'm thinking that go study abroad. Then to do that, I have to get good grades, and to get good grades, it's my personality. But I want to be a good student all the time. So she connected a desire for good grades, her own personality, and her future career and personal goals to auto writing, as indicated in the interview. So in a word, apart from a temporal decrease in SRC co-occurring with an increase in neuroticism, writer 2 was conscientiousness and gradually increasing SRC. These two variables were consistently in a supportive relationship. It's a result of writer 3. The data provided by writer 3 showed a different pattern to that of writer 1 and writer 2. In that scores for neuroticism were consistently higher than those for SRC, and the conscientiousness, which were moderate. Except for neuroticism, these scores did not fluctuate widely, but despite a 1-point decrease near the beginning of the term, neuroticism retained to the same level by the end of the term. On the other hand, Writer 3's average SRC score increased from below 3 to 3.5. Correlations for Writer 3 are somewhat perplexing. As shown in this picture, the relationship between conscientiousness and SRC as predicted is consistently supportive, even though its strength declined over time. Also, as predicted, neuroticism and SRC were initially in a competitive relationship. However, by the middle of the study, this relationship became positive and remained that way at the end. Let's look at the interview of Writer 3, sources of negative emotions and writing processes. I feel too nervous, and sometimes I research the grammar for like 2 hours. And this one, when I write something in English, I feel like each sentence might be wrong, or I always get worried that this sentence doesn't make any sense for native English speaker teachers. So based on this result, interview probed, among other questions, emotion control as relevant component of SRC. In this case, where the writer was consistently successful, it reported a higher degree of neuroticism and than her peers. When this topic was introduced, the writer described sources of anxiety and resultant processes. It's the discussion part. The researcher have discussed these 2 issues in this part. The first one is these 2 studies afford the opportunity to consider whether their cross-sectional versus the longitudinal findings are complementary. And based on the previous analysis of the data and the interview data, I think the answer is very clear. And the second one is the results converge in that SRC appear to have trait-like qualities in both studies, and both studies uncovered relationships between SRC and the personality. The last page is the implication of this study. In this study, there are pedagogical implication and theoretical implication, but I only put the pedagogical implication here because I think it may help us most, because we could learn or teach a language more effectively by using these strategies. The first one is ideas influence a writer's approach to the overall processes, planning and word choices. So introducing self-regulatory techniques to manage such processes can be useful. And the second is it is important to pursue options such as allowing students to choose their own topics. That may mean interest is biased teacher for the learner. And the last one is it is helpful to teach and acknowledge a range of strategies in order to accommodate various writers. And this is my presentation of this study. Thank you for your listening.